San Diego Comic-Con 2026 is come and gone, and amongst all the new superhero reveals, there was one trailer in particular that has me pretty excited, that being the trailer for the new Avatar show, Seven Havens. Like all 2000s kids, I'm a pretty big fan of the Avatar franchise, and the trailer for the new show looks pretty sweet. The concept of a post-apocalyptic Avatar is fun, and I'm excited to see where they go with it next. Unfortunately, this has also ushered in a brand new wave of hate for Legend of Korra, because apparently people can't recognize the most obvious bait and switch in the history of trailers. The world has gone to hell and the world blames Korra. And what, because there's one shot of her looking mildly foreboding, you think she actually destroyed the world of her own volition and died a failure? You don't think there could be possibly anything else to this? Listen, if you don't like Legend of Korra for whatever reason, that's fine. My goal with this one isn't to call you stupid or wrong. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and yours does not have to match mine. If you really do hate Legend of Korra though, all I ask is that you at least hear me out. Because I believe Legend of Korra is one of the most underrated shows of all time, and a lot of the hate it gets is pretty unfair. Before we get into it, I have to be clear right from the jump. My goal with this one is not to uncritically defend Legend of Korra. I don't think the series is perfect by any means, and there are a number of genuine flaws with it that are well deserving of criticism. The show's detractors are valid for pointing them out. I just don't think those flaws are anywhere near enough to ruin the show, and I think there are a lot of things Korra gets hate for that a lot of other series targeted at a similar demographic are given a pass on. Part of me wants to save this point for the end of the video, but I can't, it's just too relevant and I have to bring it up now. The reason Legend of Korra is looked back on so poorly is because it lives in the shadow of the greatest children's cartoon ever made, which is of course its predecessor, The Last Airbender. In order to properly defend Korra, I'm gonna have to compare it to Last Airbender a lot. What it does worse, what it maintains, and what it does better. This is not going to be a full series review, but rather I'm going to bring up some of the common arguments as to why Korra is bad and try to offer an opposing perspective. One of the best elements of Legend of Korra is, of course, Korra herself. I think people miss what show writers Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko actually tried to do with this character. She's headstrong, brash, confrontational, and a little bit abrasive. Basically everything Aang isn't. That's the double-edged sword when it comes to this character. She's a very different person from Aang and therefore needs to learn a very different lesson. Aang never wanted to be the Avatar. He wanted to be a normal, carefree kid who hangs out with his friends, pulls pranks, and plays games. Korra, on the other hand...
I'm the Avatar! You gotta deal with it!
Different story. It's very obvious that Korra was written as the polar opposite of Aang, and I'm sorry, but that's an extremely clever direction to take an Avatar sequel. It would have been so easy to make Aang's reincarnation into just another Aang, but they didn't do that, and the show is better for it. The problem is that in making their protagonist so different from her predecessor, Michael and Brian also wrote her to be pretty unlikable in a lot of scenes. But I mean, have you met a teenager before? Korra is written pretty realistically, especially for someone who was raised and trained in isolation with basically no friends her own age. In the early seasons, she comes across as rough, moody, and loudmouthed, and while I understand why people don't like her at this point, that doesn't make the writing bad. And it's not as though she's devoid of positive qualities either. She's still humorous, fun-loving, and heroic. Korra manages to embody Aang's traits while remixing them into a completely distinct character. Her arc across all 4 seasons supports this. While both Last Airbender and Legend of Korra are coming-of-age stories, they mature in different and equally valid ways. Korra's story is about learning humility. Aang's story is more of a power-responsibility thing. They're 2 different character arcs for 2 very different characters, but they exist in conversation with each other, and that's good writing. Korra is a flawed, hot mess of a character, but so is Aang. They just have different, but still individually relatable flaws. Korra gets angry and rejects Tenzin's teachings, and that's unforgivable, but when Aang selfishly hides a letter from Sokka and Katara's father completely on his own, that's not. When Korra loses her past lives, which wasn't even her own fault, that's irredeemable, but when Aang fails to defeat the Fire Lord on the Day of Black Sun, it's not. Both characters screw up on a regular basis, but there is a massive difference in how they're treated by the community. For instance, another criticism I hear about Korra is how she never wins fights, and that's just not true. Pure one-on-one fights rarely come up in either Avatar show, they're typically interrupted, but there are multiple instances where Korra gets the better of major opponents. The Last Airbender, on the other hand, is structured almost like a shonen anime. Aang constantly has to build power and level up, and despite that, Aang only wins one single 1v1 fight unambiguously, of course, the final battle against Ozai. Before that, he mostly avoids direct confrontation. His 1v1 against Azula in Book 2 is at best a stalemate. This notion I keep hearing that Korra is this failure and screw-up while Aang is this paragon of strength and victory needs to go. They're both powerhouses who excel at different things and fail in major ways throughout their stories. You could argue Aang is given more leeway because he's younger than Korra, but so are most of his major opponents. Meanwhile, Korra spends her entire series fighting fully realized adult benders in a world where bending has advanced 70 years since Aang's day. The villains in Legend of Korra are, mostly, complex and interesting, with realistic goals and motivations beyond just ruling the world. In Season 1, Korra faced Amon, who represents the Equalists, a group of non-benders who resent the innate power that benders hold over them. Pitting a villain who hates benders against the Avatar who most readily embraces the role is a fantastic conflict because it immediately forces Korra to reckon with the fact that she's the most powerful person in the world, and not everyone is going to appreciate that. Amon secretly using bloodbending to take away the abilities of his victims also feels well built up to, since we've already seen you can remove bending physically in the first series through Ty Lee's chi blocking. Not everyone likes that Amon turned out to be a hypocrite, but it makes perfect sense in context. The fact that he can casually take bending away from people already puts him tiers above a normal person in terms of power. Even before he was revealed to be a waterbender, he was already betraying his own message. He preached equality while possessing a unique power nobody else did. That's not equality. The fact that his power turned out to fit within the existing magic system of the Avatar world works, and arguably, he's not even a hypocrite. He really does hate benders, himself included. He's the traumatized product of abuse, and when he lets his brother kill both of them in a brutal and violent scene at the end of the first season, it is genuinely chilling. Combine that with an absolutely killer design and voice, and Amon is an S-tier first villain for Korra who deserves far more praise than he gets. I won't mince words. Unalaq is not nearly as strong as the other main villains in Legend of Korra, but I still feel there's some good stuff here worthy of attention. First of all, he's the only villain across both shows who starts with a personal relationship to the Avatar. In Unalaq's case, he's Korra's uncle. Unalaq is ultimately a one-note abuser who doesn't really live up to Amon in terms of power and threat, but his story still has a strong message about being careful who you put your faith in. Actually, on that note, Unalaq is the villain in Legend of Korra who has the most in common with Ozai. They're both older family members to a main protagonist who take advantage of their position and become abusers. While this story was admittedly done a lot better with Zuko in the first series, I can't say that Unalaq is really any less interesting than Ozai. Also, the final kaiju battle between Korra and Unalaq is one of the most heavily criticized parts of the show, but when Aang became a kaiju at the end of Season 1, nobody cared, so it's hard to not notice a bit of a double standard there. Again, I acknowledge that Season 2 is weak overall and probably the weakest season across both shows. It has highs and lows, but something I will always be grateful to Season 2 for is that it led directly into Season 3, baby, because Zahir is everything. Season 2 ends with harmonic convergence and Korra's decision to leave the spirit gates open, forever linking the human and spirit worlds. This results in a massive shift in spiritual energy, and airbending is given back to the population. Unfortunately, the population includes a non-bending convict named Zahir who proceeds to gather his little family of unhinged anarchists and go on a murder rampage across the world targeting Korra. This season is Legend of Korra firing on all cylinders. Zahir is witty, charming, and terrifying. We finally get to see an airbender going all out. Aang famously was a pacifist who refused to kill, but Zahir straight up ices people. He'll suck the air right out of your lungs while quoting wisdom from a famous airbending philosopher. Despite his knack for violence, though, he never kills pointlessly. He explicitly kills those who counter his ideology while otherwise being a gentleman to everyone else around him. I kinda worry that I'm coming across like I don't enjoy pure evil villains, and that's not true. Not every character needs to have a character arc, and Zahir is a perfect example of this. Even when he accepts the death of his comrades and releases his earthly connections, that feels less like a shift in his character and more like the direction he was headed anyways. When he helps Korra later on in Season 4, that's not because he had a change of heart, he just recognizes a larger affront to his beliefs than she is and chooses to help her because their goals align in that moment. Zahir doesn't just challenge Korra ideologically and physically, his impact is felt from his introduction all the way up until the end of the series. Just like Unalaq set the stage for Zahir, Zahir's killing of the Earth Queen and subsequent power vacuum left behind sets the stage for Kuvira. Amon was a right-wing populist, Unalaq was a theocrat, Zahir was an anarchist, and Kuvira is a full-blown fascist. Under the moniker of the Great Uniter, she seeks to colonize the Earth Kingdom into a single, nationalist, authoritarian regime. Gone is the monarchy, gone are personal freedoms and individual living, and gone are the days of the Avatar. If there's one villain that feels relevant to the modern day, it's this one. Kuvira is such a fascinating bad guy for Korra because in many ways you can actually kind of see where she's coming from. The Earth Queen was incompetent, the monarchy was a mistake, and Kuvira's new nation projects strength and power, rejecting symbolic figureheads in favor of a national military identity. With Korra out of commission for a few years after dealing with Zahir, it's no surprise that someone like Kuvira would crop up largely unopposed. Hell, Bolin even joins her for a while. Korra can hardly be blamed for needing time off following what was done to her, but she has to reckon with the fact that by focusing on rest and recovery, she inadvertently allowed a dictator to rise to power. I want to reiterate though, in no way was Kuvira's rise to power actually Korra's fault, but Korra felt like she was, and that made stopping her Korra's responsibility to fix, especially since Kuvira was a former ally of Korra's. Each of Korra's major villains challenges her in a really cool and creative way, fitting for the part of the story they appear in. If I'm honest, I actually think Korra might have better villains overall than Last Airbender. Zuko is a phenomenal character, but he's only a villain intermittently and becomes a full-blown hero at the end. Azula is great as a manipulative sociopath and a firebending prodigy, but she still feels more of a personal villain to Zuko than to Aang. Her relationship to Aang is more or less professional in nature, with the two of them on opposing sides. Fire Lord Ozai himself is more of a looming background threat than he is an actual character, and when we do meet him, he's honestly pretty generic. That's not to say Ozai doesn't work in the context of Last Airbender, he definitely does, but he lacks Zahir's charisma and still doesn't have much of a relationship to Aang, outside of them being each other's primary target in the war. I want to stress, I don't dislike Ozai, but the personal turmoil he put Aang through was about whether or not he would have to betray his principles and kill him, rather than anything to do with the Fire Lord as a character. And if I'm honest, I don't think that particular conflict was resolved in a satisfying way. Aang is handed a way to take Ozai's bending away by a magic lion turtle. Like, dude, just throw him in jail. That's what you guys are gonna do with Azula. We know it's possible to keep firebenders imprisoned. Or break his spine. I'm mostly joking about that. Oh yeah, and also Admiral Zhao exists. He's like the main villain of Last Airbender Season 1 and nobody ever talks about this dude. So I feel like I've presented my case pretty well on why Korra and her villains are great, but what about the rest of the cast? One of the most commonly critiqued aspects of Legend of Korra is the supporting cast. The general consensus is that these characters are not as compelling as these characters. And yeah, I actually agree with that, but I think it's a little bit more nuanced. I posit that Legend of Korra's supporting cast could not have been as close-knit and interesting as Last Airbender's. In Last Airbender, the crew was basically a D&D party, this ragtag group of misfits who met in different circumstances and adventured together across the whole series. In Legend of Korra, these are adults with jobs. They don't feel like a D&D party because they aren't one. They're a group of friends who occasionally go on quests together, but just as often do their own thing. Last Airbender showed us a childhood fantasy of friendship. A group of kids with zero parental supervision saving the world as a team while riding their sick-ass flying monster. Meanwhile, Legend of Korra showed us a realistic group of young adults who live in the same city who really like each other, but have responsibilities and relationships separate from saving the world. I love the original gang, but Korra depicts actual adult friendships. Don't get me wrong, I still think there's a lot of room for improvement when it comes to how Mako, Bolin, and Asami are written, especially regarding a particularly annoying love triangle, but I also think it's not entirely fair to compare them to the crew from the first show. Legend of Korra does, however, have two fantastic side characters of Tenzin and Lin. Tenzin's rigid nature contrasts heavily with Korra's natural brashness, yet their chemistry and student-teacher relationship feels like it develops very organically as the series progresses. Meanwhile, Lin Beifong is a lot more like Korra than either of them would care to admit at first. Two hotheads who can't stand being in the same room together, but are perfectly at home fighting side by side. And speaking of fighting, Lin has such a sick fighting style too. Metal bending is no longer relegated to a niche subcategory of earthbending belonging exclusively to one person. It has now become commonplace. The world building in Legend of Korra is, its peak. It's so good. The fact that lightning benders and metal benders are common now feels like a very nice and natural evolution from the original series. When electricity becomes the primary form of power in your world, of course people are going to improve lightning bending. The fact that those two kinds of subbending have become so prevalent in a post-industrial revolution world is brilliant. Some people complain technology evolved too fast in between Aang and Korra's time, but no, that doesn't hold any water. The Fire Nation had full-blown airships in Last Airbender. In the real world, the first powered airship was invented by Henry Gifford in 1852. The first automobile was invented by Carl Benz in 1885. That's only a 30-year time gap. Legend of Korra takes place 70 years after Last Airbender. If you really want to criticize the world building of Korra, considering that in this world people can produce energy and bend metal with their minds, technology actually hasn't advanced enough. Also, regarding the world building, I've seen a lot of hate for pro bending in the first season, but having a fully fleshed out sport that a lot of people enjoy does so much to make Republic City feel rich and actually lived in. When characters in a story have hobbies and things they like to do, it makes the world feel vibrant, and this is something both Avatar shows handled very well. Legend of Korra is not a perfect series. Season 2 is very weak. Team Avatar doesn't feel anywhere near as cohesive as they did the first time around. Tenzin's kids are really annoying. The mech suits in Season 4 look pretty weird. At the end of the day though, none of that is the real reason Korra is so underappreciated. I mentioned this in the beginning, but the curse of Legend of Korra is that despite its epic fight choreography, or its phenomenal score by Jeremy Zuckerman, or its badass villains, or its realistic and heartbreaking character writing, it was never going to succeed, not fully, and that's because it's always going to live in the shadow of Last Airbender. I don't think either show is truly perfect, as I've hopefully indicated by now, but Aang's story was lightning in a bottle. The perfect group of compelling and fun characters in the right setting hitting at the right time for the right group of 2000s kids. Legend of Korra was never gonna top Last Airbender, it never had a chance. Because realistically, nothing will ever top Last Airbender, and damn near any sequel was set up to fail. But I still really hope Seven Havens can. I want to believe it's possible to recapture the magic the first series had, but even if it's not, I still want to give Pavi a chance. I'm not expecting her story to live up to the first show, or even live up to Legend of Korra. I just want Seven Havens to be a great series in its own right. But even if it's not, it can't be worse than the Netflix show, am I right?
I'm Toph Beifong, and I invented metal bending.
Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please check out my webcomic Vibrance. It's kind of like if Avatar took place in an alien world and Sokka was allowed to be the main character. You can read it completely for free on Tapas and Webtoon.